When Frances Tiafoe and Carlos Alcaraz knocked Rafael Nadal and Miran Cilic out, it became obvious that a new US Open champion would be crowned at Flushing Meadows. Casper Ruud remains the only player in the tournament with enough experience of making it to a Grand Slam final. He knocked out the only other player who had similar credentials, and we'll be reviewing his statement, win, and what it means. Starting with Ruud's emphatic win over Berrettini. Despite having a phenomenal year, Ruud wasn't exactly the favorite against Matteo Berrettini. That's mainly down to the talent of the Italian, who made an impressive comeback from injury and was definitely not a pushover. Although once the match began, we only saw a shadow Berrettini who just couldn't live up to Ruud. Berrettini pushed him back repeatedly, but Ruud was overwhelming the court. Ruud in full flight is a sight to see, and Berrettini kept on making huge mistakes and just couldn't land a single backhand. The few times the Italian got a moment to make an impact, but the fifth seed defended everything, coming at him perfectly and brought out so many unforced errors from Matteo. The start from Ruud was easily the best we've seen him play, and he agreed to the courtside interview, saying that it was his best ever start to a match. Ruud raced to a 6-1, 5-1 start at lightning speed, and until the point in the match, he'd only hit 2 unforced errors. If it's not that crazy hitting in smooth tennis, then we don't know what to tell you, but his nerves got the better of him in the second, and he got broken before closing out the second set. By the third, Berrettini had settled in nicely and pushed Ruud to tiebreak, but once again, Casper found the line in clutch moment and won in straight sets. Moving on, Ruud aiming for number 1. With the superb win over Berrettini, Casper Ruud is in a pole position to take the number 1 spot from Daniil Medvedev. The favorites for the top spot have been knocked out, as Rafael Nadal was defeated by Frances Tiafoe, and Medvedev was shipped out thanks to a clinical display from Kyrgios. Ruud is about as humble, understanding, and pleasant as it gets, but he'd be lying if he isn't thinking about the phenomenal achievement of getting to the top of the pile in men's tennis. Ruud's been more than impressive in the last couple years, but you'd know how people are with their criticism. He got called a vulture for accumulating many wins in clay 250 tournaments and entering the top 10. It wasn't until the French Open that people actually took him seriously when he made it to the final. Then again, you wouldn't know the difference between Ruud celebrating the achievement of getting into the semifinals and losing to Nadal in straight sets in the French Open. Now though, he's in the perfect position to claim the number 1 position. He's progressed to the semifinals, and out of sheer luck, he's managed to avoid Kyrgios in the last 4 too. This is fantastic news for Ruud because Kyrgios was one of the favorites for the tournament, and he got defeated by Khachanov in 5. You'd much rather face Khachanov than Kyrgios. Up next, the race for number 1 heats up. No one would have guessed that the two players are in the running for the number 1 spot come the second week of the US Open would be Casper Ruud and Carlos Alcaraz. But that's tennis for you, unpredictable and super fun. Rafael Nadal and Daniil Medvedev were the favorites for the US Open and for the number 1 position, but they were both knocked out. The only other player with experience of deep runs in the Grand Slams was Stefanos Tsitsipas, and he lost early too. Now though, it's between Ruud, who became the finalist of a Grand Slam for the first time in his career when he lost to Nadal in Roland Garros. Carlos Alcaraz, meanwhile, is a teenager who is currently the bettor's favorite for finishing the US Open with the first position, but it is between the two unlikeliest players, and they'll give it their all. Surprisingly, both of them have their strengths on clay, so it'll be interesting to see how they fare in the bid with the Grand Slam and the number 1 spot. Ruud got to negotiate past Khachanov, and then could potentially play Alcaraz in the final with the number 1 position and a major on the line. Now that would be something. Alcaraz though has to negotiate past Jannik Sinner, and then he'll get to the semifinals, and they won't be easy, either with Frances Tiafoe or Andrei Rublev waiting for him. But both the stars know what's on the line, and it could be the opportunity of a lifetime. Lastly, the reaction from Ruud. For Ruud, the equation couldn't be any clearer. A win against Khachanov would send him straight to the top, but it's the same for his Spanish counterpart. If Alcaraz gets the final, he will become the world number 1. And if both of them get to the final, they'll probably end up fighting for the number 1 position along with the US Open crown. As for Ruud though, he's not thinking about it too much. Taking to the media, the Norwegian explained how every young player dreams of it, and now that he's in the position to do it, he hopes he can do it, but he's not thinking about it too much. He also talked about how he was sitting the right spot during the start of the match, and it was the best start start to a match for him. If he continued that form, there's no reason why he can't become the number one. A part of him would be hoping that he doesn't have to fight Alcaraz for the title and the number one crown and the teenager gets knocked out before the final. But it's also important not to get too ahead of himself. Khachanov has been in blistering form and he'll leave everything on Arthur Ashe in the final four when he takes on Ruud. In other news, first up, Nick Kyrgios loses unexpectedly to Khachanov. Kyrgios versus Khachanov was a match that everyone believed Kyrgios would win quite comfortably given his form. It was also the best opportunity for the Australian to land a major win, but unfortunately for him, things did not go his way. The Russian won the opening set after a thrilling service battle, and it wasn't until the second set that cracks began to appear in his defense. Kyrgios, sensing blood, became more aggressive on the returns and was rewarded for his consistency as he leveled the game after two. Khachanov, though unsupported by the crowd who wanted to see Kyrgios win, simply kept at it and broke Kyrgios crucially late in the third to gain a 2-1 lead. And he thought he'd done enough when he forced the game to a tiebreak in the fourth, but Kyrgios was impeccable during the tiebreak and produced some fabulous shots to level the game once again, and forced the decider. Khachanov's confidence didn't waver even in the fifth, and despite having poor record in fifth sets, he was only broken twice in the entire game to take the match and finalize his place in the semis. Kyrgios, disappointed with his performance, had to settle for a tough loss and a quarterfinal exit. Next up, Ruthless Garcia ends Coco's run. There was more heartbreak for another crowd favorite in the quarterfinal of the US Open as teenager Coco Gauff lost in front of a home crowd to Caroline Garcia. The French woman's been on a fabulous run as of late and is one of the favorites for the final major of the year. During the match though, Gauff simply couldn't match the level of Garcia, who kept on improving as the game went on. In fact, she only gave away 3 break opportunities, out of which Coco could only convert 1, while Garcia's return was spectacular and made several inroads on Gauff's serve. She won comfortably, dropping only 7 games, and has set up a semi-final clash against Tunisian star Ons Jabeur. In fact, Garcia's not dropped a single set all tournament, and she'll be hoping to carry that form into the finals. Lastly, Tomuljanovic loses to Jabeur. Ajla Tomuljanovic isn't the most popular tennis player in the US right now after she knocked out Serena Williams, but in the latest turn of events, she lost to Ons Jabeur in the quarterfinals and will be pretty disappointed with her performance. Jabeur, meanwhile, becomes the first Arab to reach the Final Four of the US Open, and the Wimbledon finalists will be hoping to go all the way in this year's US Open. Before she can do that, Jabeur will face the impressive Garcia, who's on a fantastic run after winning the Cincinnati Open and not dropping a single set on her way to the semis of the Grand Slam. That's a wrap for this video. Who do you think will be the number one in the world with the conclusion of the US Open on Sunday? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.